Yeah, I'm the manifest. Check 1, 2. Sean, we got one. We got one. Yeah. Crypto, yeah. We got one. Yeah. Maymuna, we got one. Candy, we got one. Abu X. I'm the manifest of God, the manifest of God. Hit me privately, let's see who really hard. I'm the manifest of God, ain't worrying about you frauds. Gone, hit me privately, let's see who really hard. I'm the manifest of God, the manifest of God. Let's see who really hard, ain't worrying about you frauds. I'm the manifest of God, the manifest of God. Ain't worrying about you frauds, hit me privately, let's see who really hard. Ain't worrying about you frauds, boy, I'm a gorilla, Viet Cong, guerrilla warfare. Don't make me turn killer, you acting like my knife don't shank, my gun don't bust. Hit me quietly, we can do the fist to cup. Show up, I'm really about that stick life, but I'm trying to keep it peace to bring my people to the light. You all washed up beer belly has-beens be tripping. Internet disrespect, making threats, you slipping. Now you said it how you think I'm gonna respond. With a song and a live stream, homie, you wrong. You done showed that John too many times and they ain't used it. And I ain't really sure who you got me confused with. I'm the manifest of God, the manifest of God. Ain't worried about you frauds, let's see who really hard. I'm the manifest of God, ain't worried about your frauds. Holla at me privately, come on, let's see who really hard. I'm the manifest of God, the manifest of God. Hit me privately, let's see who really hard. I'm the manifest of God, the manifest of God. Hit me privately, let's see who really hard. I'm the manifest. You know, this day will not be a reality to you if man did not calculate it or evaluate it or write it down. It wouldn't mean nothing to you.
So special.
It wouldn't mean nothing to you. The power of the mind is God mind. Connected to the force, the universal force is nature, the creator. You must be in balance with the universal force. This is the only way this works. The manifest of God, the manifest of God. Hit me privately, let's see who really hard. I'm the manifest of God, ain't worrying about you frauds. Gone, hit me privately, let's see who really hard. I'm the manifest of God, the manifest of God. Let's see who really hard, ain't worrying about you frauds. I'm the manifest of God, the manifest of God. Ain't worrying about you frauds, hit me privately, let's see who really hard. Ain't worrying about you frauds, boy, I'm a gorilla, Viet Cong, guerrilla warfare. Don't make me turn killer, you acting like my knife don't shank, my gun don't bust. Hit me quietly, we can do the fist to cup. Show up, I'm really about that stick life, but I'm trying to keep it peace to bring my people to the light. You all washed up beer belly has-beens be tripping. Internet disrespect, making threats, you slipping. Now you said it how you think I'm gonna respond. With a song and a live stream, homie, you wrong. You done showed that John too many times and they ain't used it. And I ain't really sure who you got me confused with. I'm the manifest of God, the manifest of God. Ain't worried about you frauds, let's see who really hard. I'm the manifest of God, ain't worried about your frauds. Holla at me privately, come on, let's see who really hard. I'm the manifest of God, the manifest of God. Hit me privately, let's see who really hard. I'm the manifest of God, the manifest of God. Hit me privately, let's see who really hard. I'm the manifest. Peace, family. Welcome to another edition of Moorish World TV. I am your brother, the GS, Brother Tahaka Bay. And today I got Baba in the building. I'm going to allow him to introduce himself. I'm going to allow him to introduce himself because I know that I might miss something. Now, you know, y'all watch the Shannon Sharp, and you know, Shannon Sharp give a beautiful introduction on his guest there. And I cannot match it. I'm going to work on it though. But with that being said, let me bring my brother in straight from South Africa, carrying on with the conversation that we've been having on Moorish World TV about our connection to Africa, whether it's East Africa, whether it's West Africa, Central Africa, wherever. I am of the thought that we are of the descendants of Africa and we are one family. And our struggle is one struggle, no matter where you may be on the islands, Africa, it doesn't matter. The UK, wherever you at, our struggle is one struggle. So I'm just feeling good this morning to bring my brother in, Brother Baba. Brother, can you tell us, give us your name, where you're from, anything that you can offer up to our audience, brother?
Thank you so much, Brother Tahaka. It's such an honor to be on your platform, and I want to take the opportunity to also greet all sisters and brothers that will be tuning into the show. My name is Dr. Baba Buntu. My full name is Baba Amani Olubanjo Buntu. I'm based a little bit south of Johannesburg in South Africa, on a farm that we are developing as an African commune together with some other families. I'm somebody who, for a very long time, for a good 35 years, have been on a Pan-African journey. I love our people. I love being practical about solving the problems that we face. And I agree with you that as African people globally, we face very similar problems. And one of our biggest challenges is that we fail to really unite. So I want to big up the platform. I want to big up the work that you do to really put a foot forward to make sure that as sisters and brothers, we stop just working in our little corners. We need to come together. Our enemy know that disunited, we can't really do much. And we seem to be quite loyal to that thought because it's to many of us, the idea of unity and Black power seems to be a bit far away from our realities. But I think shows like this reminds us of the possibility, and in a time where internet is doing a lot of bad, it can also be used for good. So thank you for highlighting the importance of the communication between the motherland and the diaspora. Oh, you are muted. You are muted.
Oh, my apologies. I didn't want it to bleed in while you was talking. So how long have you always been a part of the struggle, if you will, in South Africa? Were you born in it, or how does it work?
Right. So my family is from Anguilla, a small island in the Eastern Caribbean. So I was not born in South Africa, but I think from early 90s, even before I came to South Africa, I was quite involved in the solidarity campaigns and information campaigns in solidarity with the oppressive, with those who were oppressed by the apartheid government, which was ruling at the time, the white supremacist government that was ruling South Africa. So I was quite informed about South Africa, and I came to South Africa first in 1993. I stayed here for about 6 months, and then I went overseas to finish my studies. But I think I already knew then in my heart that there was something about Azania or South Africa that had really captured my heart. And I wanted to continue to do the work that I was already introduced to at that time. So I became somebody who then moved to Azania, set up my home and my family here. And from there, I've been involved very strongly in revolutionary work, in activist work, in educational work. We have a company called Ebukusini Solutions, which I run together with my wife and one of our spiritual sons. And the objective of the company is really to provide spaces for African-centered dialogue, education, learning, and training. We realize that just as there's a lot of misinformation in the African diaspora, there's a lot of misinformation on the African continent. And I think this is important to say because I know many people in the diaspora may think of the continent as a place to just come home to and just sink your feet in and learn, and you're away from oppression. Oppression is very present here as well. There's a lot of confusion, a lot of miseducation, misinformation, and that's why in all corners where we are as African people, we need to work every single day to really fight this oppression that is mounted against us in so many different ways, in so many different layers, and in all spaces where we exist.
So do the South African people, do they understand? Let me say it like this. Many people in America, unfortunately, this is my perspective, many of us descendants from the inhabitants of Africa don't really understand the gravity of oppression here, because we get it all angles. If you ride down the street and see a billboard, it can be oppressive image that does not reflect our morals or our values, and our children will continue to see this. It could be the rainbow community or whatever they choose to put up a billboard, and it's psychologically enters into the psyche of our children. So the levels of oppression in America is really, really, it's kind of underhanded, hidden. Is it the same way in South Africa?
It's very
Because you got
similar.
blatant, I'm sorry, brother, you have blatant oppression, and then you got in clandestine oppression, if you will. You know, is it similar to that there?
You've got all the levels, and I think so let me say it like this. I think that the older population in South Africa is very aware of white supremacy, very aware of what apartheid has done to the country, and some of the aftermath that people are living with psychologically, spiritually, politically, poverty, like that. The whole setup of white supremacy is quite etched into people's memory. Only in 1994 that the first so-called democratic election was held. I'm saying so-called because democracy is often a word, not so much a reality. But I think the generation that is growing up now, depending on where they go to school, depending on what kind of economic status their family have, there's a number of younger people who may not have felt the oppression on their body the way that apartheid works, because apartheid was very blunt. It was very in your face. It had signage saying that nobody can sit here if you're black. You can't go to this toilet if you're black. Very similar to Jim Crow laws in America. So where you lived, what language you spoke, where you went to school, where you could work, what kind of pay you had, all of that was informed by an experience of direct oppression. For those born after the 90s, they may not have felt oppression in the same way. They may have read about it, they may have heard about it, they may have heard stories about it, but they haven't necessarily been accosted by the police in the same way. They haven't been put into jail under the same circumstances. That does not mean that people are not experiencing severe problems with authorities, with housing, with employment, because unemployment in this country is disastrous. It's really, really high. There are communities where unemployment, especially among young people, is more than 50%. So having a job in this country is not something that is regular. So I think, but not everyone is able to necessarily draw the direct line from that reality to oppressive power structures. So some, and I think when I talk about the youth, let me say that there's at least two groups. There are those who maybe have been kind of lulled into an understanding that the government wants well, the world as it is, especially the Western world, wants to really help us and wants to do good things for us. And there's also the outbreak group of young people who have demonstrated against colonial ways of teaching, colonial ways of regulating universities, the job market, housing, all of that. You may have heard of campaigns like Fees Must Fall, Roads Must Fall, where a lot of young people have really, really, really put their own lives at risk and being thrown into jail for demonstrating against the oppression that the black government continues to allow, continue to support, and continue to not really do anything about. So there are definitely a lot of people who are aware, but as we know, the westernization is not just a worldview. It's not just something that sits statically. It's an ongoing machinery that has its goal to infiltrate all of our thinking, and even those, it even targets those who are staunchly against westernization. And its goal is to that even those will at some point soften a little bit, give up a little bit, become more incised by the way westernization works, and then slowly and gradually become part of that system. And we see that a lot in South Africa with people who go through academic studies, go out in the working field and now become part of the system. We see it with politicians. We see it with people who earn a little bit more than the masses, who now become very concerned about what they own and what they earn. And then people looking up to them, because obviously nobody wants to live in poverty. So we all want to aspire towards earning better, living better, having better lives. But what that life often comes with is that it also demands a certain loyalty. With government structures, with international politics, you shouldn't be too outspoken, you shouldn't be too radical, you shouldn't think too much against capitalism, westernization, Christianity, and all of these things. So if you do that, you become a target and you become a threat to the system. So it's very similar to the realities of America as well.
When we talk about things like that, it reminds me of how you have our people working for the interests of the, as some would call, the colonizer here in America, or the European here in America, working for the interest. Is the government there in many ways working for the interests for the Western goals and the Western aims? That's one question. And another question is, I'm of the thought that here in America, that the moment that we have uh, thinkers, or we call it revolutionary, but we have thinkers that is in opposition of the norm, then they send out people that gets into the midst of those thinkers, and they redirect them. Here in America, I see it all the time. Is that something that happens um, in South Africa?
Oh, absolutely. And maybe just for the first part of your question, I think maybe let me start with the continent as a whole first, which of course South Africa is a part of, but there's also something that kind of sets South Africa a little bit apart from the rest of Africa to some extent. So remember how Africa during colonization was extremely tied to and ruined by its colonial powers, who completely took over decision making, governing, military, and everything that comes with that, how everything was set up. When then a new dispensation came through what we could call liberation, but turned out later that it wasn't really fully liberation. It was just a different form for many of the colonial powers to still dictate to Africa and still hold its grip around its economy, around its resources, which we often refer to as the post-colonial period, or the neo-colonial realization or reality. So many countries and many spaces and regions in Africa do not have the freedom to really make decisions for themselves. Yes, so we may have Africans who are governing the countries. We may have Black governance. We may have all the different apparatus of a government looking like us, but they may not serve us, and they may not be able to, because this is a whole machinery of also how the Western powers infiltrate, how they school and educate, how they also send money and resources towards those that they would like to see in power, who favor their policies and who will make sure that they can manage their business interests in African countries. Mm-hmm. So the whole aspect of governance is very complex, and then people on the ground in an African country who want to see their government working for them, obviously, is often very disgruntled, often very disappointed, often very angry because voices are not being heard. There's elections and there's so-called democratic processes, but people do not necessarily feel that they're being heard. Then South Africa is often seen as different, and the short way to say the difference is really because the biggest white population in Africa is situated in South Africa. So South Africa has also, it has an incredible PR machinery. I'm sure you've seen some of it, the hotels, the infrastructure. There's a lot of things that technically is advanced in South Africa, and that makes South Africa, at least from the outside, look very modern. It looks very democratic. It looks very attractive. And also, if you have money and you come to visit South Africa, and I'm talking even to people in the African diaspora, and I've known a few who have come to South Africa, and if you have money, you can stay in an okay hotel. You may not see that this country lives under severe oppression and marginalization still. So when you have money and you stay in certain places, you may not see these disparities that mark the masses of the country. So you will easily think, I think a lot of things have changed. I don't know why people are complaining. I see Black people in powerful positions. I see them driving nice cars. I see people running offices. They are lawyers, they are business, they are bankers. This looks like the ideal dream of Black power. And so it looks great when you go to certain places, but when you really let the reality sink in and you go to people's houses and you start to see where the majority of people live and what they go through on a daily basis, you realize that this is a country marked by huge difference between those who have, which is the majority, and those who don't, who is the minority. So obviously, for exploitative power to work, they need to recruit and make sure that those who become successful and become the voices of governance and leadership must also be subdued into loyalty to those structures. So that happens a lot. And even, I would say, even to the effect, because when we look at, there are certain African countries where you can't express yourself as freely as maybe many people feel in South Africa. In South Africa, people would talk against the president, they will talk against politics, they will talk against, and most of the time it's kind of acceptable. There are some horrible examples of people being gunned down and shot for expressing their opinion, but mostly people can say quite a lot of things. The freedom of speech is quite advanced, at least in comparison to a few other countries. But there's very sneaky power regimes that work under the surface. So you may not be publicly criticized for having a certain opinion, but some of your benefits might be withdrawn. Some of your job privileges may be drawn away from. You may not be advanced in your job position. You may not be elected into council. You may not have the I don't want to call it luxury, but the opportunities that normally people would get when they are in your position. So by seeing that and observing that, you also learn that, oh, if I speak too freely, if I criticize too much, if I'm too honest, I will lose these opportunities.
Yes.
And I don't want to lose them. So I'll be more quiet. I won't voice my opinion so much. And that's how you also, over time, see people become more and more part of that system.
Yeah, see, Moorish World TV is very, very highly opinionated, and I bring a lot of what we call here receipts to my opinions, and so the audience is really on raw truth. You know, we call them Moorish World TV citizens on raw truth, and that's why I'm so glad to have you here. Many people would ask, which somebody asked last night on my show. We did a show about the idea that Africans in America are Indians, American Indians, and I kind of shrugged that off. But one of the brothers who claim American Indian minus Africa, and I say minus Africa for those who don't know, minus Africa means that we have a group here that don't even believe that the slave trade happened. So, but the brother asked me in the comment section, he says, well, if Africa was so good, if Africa was so strong, if Africa was so many warriors, how did they were able to just grab people out and bring them, et cetera, et cetera. And so I said to the brother, I say, brother, right now, if you get out of line in your neighborhood, they'll lay you down. What are you talking about? I said, we got plenty incidents where George Floyd and others was being choked out while people just sit there and watch. What are you talking about? So there is, I mean, it's a different era of time and a different methodology, the way that they did it. But hey, it happens today in the same principled way. So the question would be, people would ask, say, well, is it quote unquote Black Africans in South Africa the majority? How is it that a minority European is able to dominate in the way that they do? That would be that's a fair question. I get it all the time with my position. So it is what it is.
No, and thank you for raising it. I think it is a very valid question. And I think we need to talk more in depth about this, because we often have these conversations in rapid exchanges of words and we don't really get to the depth. So first of all, I think one thing that I really want to encourage our sisters and brothers is to really study how our oppression unfolded. When did it start? How many different layers did it have to it? So I wanted to start with kind of what you alluded to at the beginning of your question. If Africa was so great, how could it be invaded? I think that's a very fair question. I mean, in anybody's mind, if Africa is so powerful, it has warriors, it has science, it has intelligence, it has all these different things that we claim in African-centered theories and all of that. how could it just be invaded by a few ships of Europeans who didn't even know the language, couldn't even navigate, couldn't even walk in this climate? How? Now, and I think there's not just one answer to that. Remember, I wanted to mention something other than what we often talk about. I'm coming to that part as well. But we need to think about climate factors, for instance, that the continent has also changed over these years alongside invasions and oppression. So, for instance, Sahara, which we today see as a big desert, was once a fertile land. That changes the composition of the continent, because over time, the northern part of Africa was not so invadable, because we had people there, we had civilizations, we had people who would hold the fort and defend us from attacks and invasions. But over time, we became more vulnerable, more invadable. People could come over, stay for a while, learn the language, get involved in the trade routes, understand the religion, and now start to pit one group against another pit. Be able to offer more advanced trade on a particular item so that they could become part of the trade. And slowly and gradually, over many generations, through intermarriage, through language, through culture, they became part of society. And you know, when that happens, and people have secret agendas and they have hidden agendas, over some time, they can also then become the people who instigate, the people who pit communities against each other, and through that seek power. So when Europeans then came, remember that already the continent was having a lot of issues with the Arab-led slave trade that had been there for hundreds and hundreds of years.
Right.
So people were already marked by what slave trade did to African people. And you can just imagine, I mean, we didn't live at that time, but we can just imagine what it would do if we knew that our children could be taken away as slaves. What would that do to our community? Would we want to stay in an open space where everybody could find us? Probably not. So we would want to stay in spaces that are not so easy to find, not so easy to inhabit, not so easy to discover. And I'm mentioning that as an example to say that over time, the continent changed. Where you live, what you did, how you approached a stranger, maybe coming from a culture where a stranger would be, oh, this is a possibility of a friendship. We could maybe do business together. Let me talk to you. From skepticism to even saying, but even if you look like me, I'm not sure if I can trust you. And I'm thinking here we see the seeds of what has now become black on black skepticism and even violence. This is seeded long time ago. And then when Europeans came, they then knew they had a very tricky way of pitting people against others. They would work with elites, they would work with kings, they would work with leadership, and pull them into taking their side slowly and gradually. And the leadership culture in Africa, and I think this is important to understand as well, where it comes from a very strong belief and faith in authority. So when authority, because authority was at one time, it was ordained by spiritual power. Right. It was ordained by what we could call God. And when something is ordained by God, you're not supposed to question it. You're not supposed to be against it. You're supposed to follow. So when that leadership becomes corrupt, when that leadership becomes full of ideas that are foreign and that are against the people, there's a mismatch now. There's a conflict, because the leaders that are telling you that you should give away your cattle, you should move these houses, let these new invaders take them. You're supposed to follow the order, but you're not sure what this is. And that creates chaos. That creates doubt. And when you can see that when this mission of invading and taking over the whole continent means also that there will be a separation between who has and who does not have. You obviously want to be in the group that has. And there will be some people who are susceptible to do whatever it takes to be in the group that has. Side with the enemy, do things that are in their favor. And often I think about this, that probably there were also people who said, you know what, these people are just powerful, they shoot and they kill everyone. So to rescue our people, we will just work with them on the surface. But in a couple of months, we will all, like, we are not going to be part of them. We are going to retreat and really return to how we want to live. But then what they didn't know, as that process unfolds, it becomes too late and the enemy is too strong or too, when I say clever, I don't mean clever in a positive way. I mean clever in the sense of wanting to take over and wanting to run this power game again and again and always. So I think that we need to understand. So I'm not sure how people are saying that slave trade didn't happen. Because for me, it's a fundamental question in understanding how Africa developed thereafter. Africa before slave trade and Africa after, and we're talking about close to 1,000 years, is two different Africas. It really destroyed the continent. It changed the continent. So when people then, remember many people came from other places and said that they were there to help us, said that they are there to help us establish. And I'm thinking at that point, there would be many communities that would be interested and very open to somebody who appears to want to help, want to develop, want to do something, because the communities are so wounded by what has happened throughout the slave trade. So I think there's many different reasons why that endemic weakness started to corrupt the whole continent. And remember, European powers were very, very targeted. When these discoverers, the European discoverers who were sent by European kings and queens, remember, Europe was already fighting each other. European countries and nations were fighting each other. They wanted to be the first, the best, the highest, the mightiest, the richest. And when they sent people to other parts of the world, especially Africa, and they came back and said they got gold, they got diamonds, they got resources, they got incredible things. So of course, the first thing that they would say, we need to be the ones that own that. We need to be the ones. Do whatever it takes. Kill however many you need. Tell us how many troops you must send. We are going to own that, because European leaders were so they were so involved in this idea that I must be the highest, I must be the mightiest. So there was a war going on that even forced them, or not forced them, but motivated them in a negative way to even do whatever was bad in a much worse and more intense way. So I think we need to understand how these things work in collaboration with each other. Think about a thing like health, how certain diseases didn't exist on the continent, but because of these invasions, other viruses, other bacteria now start to flourish. Now, health problems. People are wiped out. People are not able to resist those illnesses in many generations. The climate change that I mentioned, the religion. I think this is important that to also understand that Africa had its own systems for spirituality and faith. And some are quite alive today as well, but it's nothing like what it used to be. And that used to be our power. That used to be, I mean, there were at the beginning of the invasion, there were spiritual leaders whose role it was to fight the invaders spiritually. Today, we're not even sure how to grapple with that idea. So we need to also understand what happens to a people who come from a very strong and powerful position, spiritually and otherwise, are gradually subdued to a people who is etched into the world history as baboons, as nothing, as not human, as slaves, as invadable, and as invadable people, to the point that, you know, I'm always using this example in my classes when I say that somebody, this is almost anywhere in the world. If somebody holds up a book and says, oh, I'm seeing this picture of a slave here, without saying anything about that person's race, everybody in the world knows that that must be a black person. And it's not because only black people have been enslaved throughout history, but we are the slaves. We are the slaveable people. That's what we have become. So all these things working, remember even academia, remember also places that we are supposed to trust, places of knowledge, places of knowledge and power. They were very instrumental in creating these worldviews of seeing black people as inferior and invadable, and made it legitimate for white people, and other people are not African as well, because, you know, everybody has followed food. Africans belong now at the bottom of the barrel, and everyone else wants to get a piece of Africa.
Absolutely. I interviewed a guy, or the guy wanted to debate me, because of his misunderstanding about being a Moorish American. And he was from Morocco. He was more of the European persuasion of a Moroccan, if you will. And his concept was I think he misunderstood when the Moorish Americans say we are descended from northwestern and southwestern shores of Africa. In other words, that we could have been plucked from any of the tribes from the northern to the southern. So it's a majority of us, but not all of us. And so that's one of the concepts. But before then, prior to that, we connect ourselves migrating from East Africa. But it's another story. But anyway, the guy picks apart the Moorish concept from, I guess, pseudo internet babble, and he emails me and say he want to have a talk with me, and so he gets on, he talks with me, and his concept was that dark Black Africans in Morocco never exist, and they only came as slaves. And I asked him very calmly, I said, is that what's being taught? He said, yes, all of you came as slaves. He was like, there is no dark Black Africans. And I say, do you know you got historians that actually, European historians that actually came to North Africa and described dark Black Africans? I said, you do know that? He said, no, that never happened. I said, do y'all have y'all don't have any alternative sources outside of Morocco? Because it sounds like y'all are in a bubble. And he says, no, I'm just telling you the history. All Blacks came from southern Africa, and there was never none here. And I was just blown away, like, wow, because there's many historians that traveled there and documented who the people looked like before all of these invasions, even before the Roman invasion. Is there some shaping of ideals in South Africa similar to that, whereas though it's like a bubble, and if you're not outside of the bubble, you can't see exactly it being perpetrated against you as it relates to the ideals that people perpetuate?
Absolutely. And I think here, what I just said earlier about the older and the newer generation. So I said something about the older generation being very marked by the history of apartheid and being aware of white supremacy. But I think a lot of people have bought into the idea of democracy, and now everything is much better. We have Western education and all of this is good. Some people would stand there. But now, with young people, and especially those who have a sense of critical thought, have access to internet. Remember what you just mentioned now about people in Morocco thinking of and conceptualizing Morocco as a place where there are no original dark Black people. And I think that idea has flourished throughout the continent. I mean, we have even been forced to use expressions like sub-Saharan Africa, as if it's a different Africa than the northern part, which kind of justifies the idea or the claim that real Africans, dark Black Africans, are from the southern or from the mid-range and downward, not the top layer. That's a political term to kind of justify Arab presence, which is also an invasion, which is also people who didn't belong or didn't originate from the continent. All of this continent was Black. We even traveled to so many other parts of the world as Black, as dark Black people. And that's why you will find Black people in Europe, you will find Black people in Russia, you will find Black people in Indonesia who have no other story than that they are from there. So I think that's the original story, but then with this wave of Eurocentric and Arabized stories, we have now started to relate to the continent based on their terms. And I think the difference that I'm seeing in the younger, especially the younger, not only, but especially the younger population of South Africa is that, remember, I think this is probably similar to America as well, that, you know, you think about the time of Garvey, when you think about the time of W.E.B. Du Bois, There was no internet. There was no easy way to get all the information. Books were not available.
Right.
But because people gathered, people found critical thinkers, found other critical thinkers, and they could now bond and they could now build theories, and they could now communicate and start to build educational theories around what had happened to Black people in America. And in a similar way, because Africa has been held in such a grip when it comes to information, it's school, it's work, payday, and that's it. And when then internet comes, and I'm not saying internet is the only source, but of course it just created a mass information. And if you use it right, you can now, as a critical thinker in South Africa, now start to bond with a critical thinker in another African country. You can now connect with a person whose complexion is dark in Morocco and say, oh, are you visiting? Where are you from? I'm from Morocco. But I didn't know that we are there. No, let me tell you. And now you're getting history from somebody who can tell you their life story, not just a book that you have been instructed to read. And that's the whole difference of many young people right now, that they can think into information, they can find out. I'm thinking about, for instance, a more recent conversation that has been held a lot now across the continent is colorism. Colorism in Africa. And it's not that people didn't know about colorism. I think this idea about light skin and black and dark skin has always been debated to some degree. But when people started to realize it's not just me or my family or my street or my friends that have these discussions, this happens in every African country. This happened there are stories about this, and now people are coming forward to tell these stories. And through that, the consciousness around what colorism is, where it comes from, what it means, that there are terms that you can use to discuss this, that there are theories that establish a frame of understanding this. It does something to how you hold your argument and how it goes from just having an idea or an opinion to really understand that you're part of forming theories about how life is for African people. So I think, as you were saying, these tricks of making us think that Africa is a certain way, this is quite interesting as well. Many people, because South Africa has been super locked away from information, especially during apartheid, there was very few channels. I mean, everything was controlled. So people were not supposed to know much about the rest of Africa and the world at large, and especially from African voices. So when people started to, I remember this when I came to South Africa first as well, that people would say things like, yeah, I met this guy from Africa. And I'm thinking, but we are also from Africa. What do you mean that you met a guy from Africa? And what they normally meant is that they met a guy from another African country. So that was Africa. South Africa was not really thought of as Africa. And that's how white people have kind of instituted an idea, because to them, you know, there are white people in South Africa until this day who claim that this is their land.
Oh, yeah.
This uninhabited, they found it and they have developed it and they've made it beautiful. So anyone who wants any part of this must go through them. That's their opinion. And now they have created this story that African people didn't really belong in South Africa. They came later, and so when we don't have sources, when we don't have other people to bond with who are critical thinkers, we may feel like we live in a vacuum for a very long time and we don't know what to do with the things that we can feel is wrong, but we can't back it up. So this is why information, African-centered education, which is what we focus on, is essential to every Black youth.
Wow. When you speak of colorism, my wife is your complexion, and here in America, she always said, you know, a lot of people don't understand that sometimes, you know, how our darker counterparts would look at her as if, you know, she got something against them, and it's the old theory, whether it's true or not, where the guy writes, he said, we're going to turn the dark against the light and the light against the dark, the old against the it escapes me that letter, but whatever the making of a slave, but whatever the case may be, is that something that type of colorism goes on in South Africa also?
Oh, absolutely. And the apartheid regime actually, isn't it the Willie Lynch letter that you are referring to?
Yes, that's it. The Willie Lynch letter, yes.
I think, and you know, there's discussions about whether it was false or constructed or what. But whatever the case is, it's a very accurate analysis of what our oppressors did. And in South Africa, they particularly use complexion, similar to, there's something in African American history that was introduced as the brown bag test, right? So to find out where you fall in terms of your complexion. And what they did in South Africa was that they created another racial category called colored. And colored would be people sometimes of mixed origin, but not always necessarily mixed, but mainly that they were speaking the language of the oppressor, of the Dutch oppressor, which became Afrikaans. So colored people, sometimes people misnomer this and think of it as that means mixed race. But not all colors are necessarily mixed race. They might be of some mixed origin, but many of them are even descendants of the Khoisan speaking people, the indigenous people of the region. So it's a very clever tool, because when complexion becomes an issue, and when complexion becomes, you can think, especially for women, when it becomes the divider about who is pretty and approachable and who is ugly and difficult, and for men when it becomes who's weak and nonsensical and who's strong and desirable. This now plays into spaces that we don't even think of political, because we think, who cares about complexion and looks? I mean, we are here for revolution. Yeah, but even in revolutionary spaces, that becomes an issue because we internalize. I think this is one thing that I think African people across the world, we need to really, really understand what internalizing racism has done to us. Starting to see the world as normal through racialized, colonized eyes and experiences. And in that experience, we start to think of that, you know how some people would say that, I know she's really pretty, she's light skinned. And everybody would say, I know what you mean. If she's light skinned, obviously she's pretty. What does that even make sense? And what kind of power, whose power are you bringing into your own way of defining the world? You are talking, that's the white voice in you. And whiteness has also embedded itself into us. We also define the world. I may come to you because I'm a doctor, I'm an academic person, and I look down on you because you don't have a degree. Whose power scheme is that? It's not ours. So some of us become very dangerous to our own brothers and sisters because, and this is what really scares me, the presence of whiteness, and I think Africa is a great example of that. The presence of whiteness is no longer necessary because we do the work for them. We are willing to kill each other. We are willing to take each other down. We are willing to do so many horrible things in pursuit of white power.
And you mentioned that's very powerful, and I think I'm gonna have to clip that one and let that flow, because I always talk about, you know, that white supremacy and the oppression that we have received. Now we give it out with, it's like the gift that keep on giving. You know, they give it to us, and now we just recycle it and give it out, and now it's on autopilot. Like they could just sit back and we just keep it pushing. With that being said, my son and my daughter go to a school here, Watoto Academy, and the teachers there took a trip to South Africa. And to your point earlier of that, you say, you know, you can go to parts of South Africa and don't even get to see the oppression or the original people there living in the oppressive state, if you will, or even some of the natural states that's really not oppressive, but just living like regular, humble people. And so one of the things that one of the teachers told me, the director said, is that, you know, she's like, what I seen in South Africa, I could have seen in America. She was like, she said the trip that I scheduled, you know, it really didn't give me what I was looking for. You know, she said, I seen everything there that I seen in America. So I'm thinking that she was talking about what you mentioned. But now on the flip side of that, I've Googled and I've YouTubed and I looked at some of these videos where as though it seems as though that in these videos, it displayed like what we would call in America, shanty towns, where tin homes and It looked kind of bad. Is that still a thing?
Oh, very huge thing. And the majority of South Africans live in rural areas, and often rural areas that are not serviced, and where government keep promising services that are not being kept or being delivered. Secondly, a huge component of the population in South Africa lives in townships, which were demarked spaces for Black workforce to service white residential areas. That was the original idea of a township. So if white people really could choose, they really didn't want any Black people in any town that they built, but they built some townships close in some close nearby a city, so that they would have ample workforce available to them, because they didn't want to do their gardening, they didn't want to look after their children, they didn't want to grow vegetables, they didn't want to do all this hard labor, so they needed Black people to do that, and they needed to be available. So they needed to be about a half an hour away or an hour away by transport, so that they could be supplied. And so living in squalor, living with very little, living in poverty, living without means, is a very normal thing in South Africa. And it pains me that I'm thinking about your experience, maybe as somebody who's now researching South Africa. And for instance, you go on podcasts, you go on YouTube, you try to find out. Very few of the voices of the majority of the people are present there. So you'll find podcasts who discuss hip hop and discuss house music and discuss all kinds of interesting things, and think, oh, this is quite developed. This is what I would find down the street from where I live. This is not what I expected maybe to be the dominant African voice. But why is that? Because those who are speaking on those podcasts might be in a position where they have access to certain sources. They may have worked for a media channel before, and now they're able to see how this works. They'll be able to get the equipment. They're able to get a sponsor. They're able to get, and those are the things that will be sponsored. If I'm setting up a podcast to talk about the real reality of South Africa, there might be people tuning into it, but I might not last very long, because here, it's very difficult to make a living on doing things like this, to get the time and the equipment and afford to be able to do this consistently. So you'll find a creator or a content creator that creates some of that information. They may have 5 videos on the channel, or maybe 6, 7 videos, because it's not sustainable and it's not easy to keep that going. So there's a huge disparity between those who are in the entertainment sector, those who talk about sports, those who talk about all the things that is kind of seen as regular in the westernized media world. But those who talk about, indigenous farming, those who talk about spirituality. Well, let me say something about that. So you may find a number of podcasts and YouTube content and social media content on spirituality and culture, which is quite interesting. So as one of the aftermath of the awakening that happened through the Feast Must Fall and the political awakening around coloniality, around white supremacy, around westernized education, all of that, there was also several voices from the spiritual communities that also then took advantage of what was happening and also presenced their voices. And this is quite interesting for me, because for a long time I was part of a small program, like a 15-minute program on the main broadcaster channel in South Africa, which was called Imani, which is the Kiswahili word for faith. And I was a contributor there. I was interviewed there and about the work that we did in terms of education, but also in terms of African culture, knowledge, science, and spirituality. And a lot of the people who became part of our work, there were people who saw us on that program. But it was a very small program. It was 10 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday. And now, if you look at the reality now, there's a lot of content on African spirituality. There's a lot of people who are traditional healers, who work with these things, who are now on these platforms. But this is also very important to also remember that, yes, it's good that African spirituality now is placed and centered more. But those who have the highest viewership, I would claim, many of them, are also people who dabble into other ways of presenting themselves. So there's a lot of attention to makeup and presentation. So the prettiness and the beauty of a woman, for instance, goes along with it. The voices that are radical and controversial are the ones that get the viewership. So those traditional healers, who are also not as traditional as we maybe think of them as. So they also talk about, they talk about sexual stuff. They talk about that it's okay to be a prostitute. They talk about things that are quite problematic. And then they become the faces of this spiritual thinking. And this I see almost like an orchestration of how commercial powers work in favor of Westernization. That even a topic, African spirituality, because that's a topic that you should be able to trust when it's presented. But no, not today. You can't trust that. It might be mixed in with a whole lot of different messages, a whole lot of problematic worldviews and ways of misconstruing what African spirituality really is about.
This interview really confirms the universality of this oppression, because what you're explaining is the same thing that we see here. What hits the true algorithms of the networks, YouTube, and all the social media here is the things that want to be pushed by the oppressor to further the oppression and the disillusioned group of people that can be used for the benefit of the oppressor. I look at Moorish World TV, and I've been doing this. I mean, people that tap in, they be like, man, why you don't got 200,000 subscribers and all of that? Well, this is not going to be pushed for the 200,000 subscribers. This is just not going to work that way. We got to inch our way there. So here in America, you have the same exact thing. If you're talking about that aliens built pyramids, then, and if you can, try to articulate it, and you put on a nice suit and a nice tie, and you start speaking the king's language and talk about aliens built pyramids, and you're going to lift yourself up off the ground right before people, and we used to do this. I mean, that stuff flows on the internet. I'm talking about flows. However, here in America, it just seems like whether it's rap, whether it's spirituality, anything, it's all infused with some nonsense. So I definitely see the connection there. Now, when you have you ever went into the areas where or spent a significant amount of time in the areas where those brothers and sisters do not have access to the modernization? How is that?
Oh, absolutely. So a huge part of our work takes place in townships. We have been very adamant that when we are discussing these issues, we can't hide them away in lecture halls and places where, because you could argue that a lecture hall at the university is open to everyone, but it's not, because a lot of brothers and sisters will not feel that I can go there because I don't have the right clothes, I don't have the right look, I don't know anybody there, I'll probably be seen. So they will not even try, let alone they might live far away, they don't have money for the transport. So we always bring the information into different townships, and when we can, because we're also not a super resource organization, when we can, we also go to rural areas where in many locations, like you kind of explained, people would have very little or nothing. And for me, it's very important that African-centered consciousness is seeded in communities where the will to get out of the situation they are in is very strong. So fused with that you want to do better for yourself, you want to start something, you want to live a viable life. You also weave that in together with an African consciousness, so you understand why you are in the position that you are, and that you don't just take anything that is thrown at you as an opportunity and say that this is something I'm going to go with. You're going to be critical. You're going to be in your power. You're going to stand in your ancestors' footsteps. You're going to walk in your ancestors' footsteps, and not just be gullible to oppressive voices and commercial voices that just want to further corrupt your mind. But that's difficult because our machinery is not, you kind of alluded to that yourself when you mentioned your platform. We don't have access to the same power structure and romanticizing and sending out the picture of Westernization. looks good. It looks really good. It looks happening. Whether it's presented, like you said, through music, through sport, through academia, on all different arenas, it looks good. Even the home space looks good. And next to that, if you then see a little hut with some running water outside and a storage, and you know what you're going to choose. You know what you're going to look to as powerful and desirable. So it's difficult to choose us because we are so linked to what is not westernized, what is not good, what is not modern, what is not happening. So it's difficult to choose us. And I think that in that analysis, we are very close to also understand why we hate each other so much. Why, when you get an opportunity, why can't I celebrate you? Why can't I be there for you? Why can't I be the one rooting for you and making you even stronger? Because I know that if I do that, in the next round, I will be stronger. But we don't think like that. We think like, no, if I can't get up, he's not going to get up too. Let me pull him down. And it's a mindset of being in powerless for many generations. It's not something that you can just snap out of, because we can all have this conversation. Yeah, we should support each other. You know, black people must do this, black business, let's buy black, let's do this. Almost everybody has some form of consciousness around these issues. Very few people would say, don't buy from black people, don't stop killing black people. Very few people would say that. But do we do it? Do we understand what it takes? Do we do it automatically? Or do we only do it when we attend the workshop with Tahaka Bey, who's saying we must do this and this is the only way out? Because we become performers. We sit and say this, but we go home and do something completely different. And that has to stop.
And brother, to your point, one thing that I mentioned on the show, I said, you know, about the we buy black thing and we must buy black and buy from each other. I said the other night, I said, you know, one thing we need to do, we need to advance that idea and start to centralize our dollars with a conscious centralization. In other words, that we focus our money or our resources, whatever they may be, our talents, whatever, from a centralized perspective in order to harness the true power of it. Because in today's world, we're saying buy black, and one will go and buy a t-shirt, or one will go and buy some oil and whatever they may buy, conscious books or whatever, and then the store owner will go and buy some weed with the money. They're not recycling it. You know what I'm saying? So I think one of the things we be missing, like we have I'm in Baltimore, Maryland, and so Baltimore is one of the most diverse conscious cities that you ever could see. You know, you might have a conscious guy, as we would call, say, a Moorish American, that may have been around 30 some years and just walk up on you, and you know, they'll do all the lingo, all the language that, you know, our elders have taught us, and asked you, you know, man, you know who got some weed? And I'm looking like, no, why would I know who got some weed? So we got a very diverse thing here. So I think to your point, you know, if we can learn to centralize our conscious dollar, we'll be maybe better off. But on another note, is there an effort to put something formidable against oppressive governments, especially say, because here in America, there is nothing formidable here. Let me be clear. It looks good, as you say, but there is no opposing if you will, Afrocentric opposition philosophically. Not talking about aggressively, bloodshed, none of that. I'm saying there is no true philosophical opposition, and those that appear to be opposition, through research you will find that it's controlled opposition. Is that something that exists, and have you ever witnessed in real time controlled opposition speaking the language, walking the walk, seeming to be you, but they're really them, that look like us? Can you speak on that? Is there anything like that? Because that's very common here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, you know, the westernized world, they study us. And when we come out, I'm thinking about, let me call it the Black Lives Matter era, but you know what I mean by that.
Yes.
Many aspects of that too, but let me call it an era because it influenced the whole world. It had a global scale of Black people coming forward and talk about how they were oppressed in their own countries and how Black lives do not matter. And I think as the Westernized powers saw that, they chose a slightly different approach than what they had done before, because the approach before that was to just block, gag, silence, and not invite. Now all of a sudden people were invited into TVs. And okay, I'm invited. I can speak my truth. I can speak about white supremacy. Primetime TV. What is happening here? I'm not used to this. Is this the time we've been looking for? Is this the power that we wanted? Am I being listened to? Am I having some authority here? And it may feel like that for a while. But of course, the game is let them speak until their voices are hoarse, until they get tired. Very, very soon, they will be tired of this revolutionary thing. We give them a night away. We give them some nice hotels, some nice banquets, and some dinners, and they're going to be in our corner very soon. And that's exactly what happened. And I remember with the Peace Must Fall movement, which was a student movement here in South Africa. And I could say that it still is, but maybe not as organized as back then, 5, 6, 7 years ago. The media and the Western world, they insisted that there must be a leader. And the movement said, we don't have leaders. We have troops, we have cadres, we have people who walk the walk and talk the talk. We don't have leaders who are our ultimate spokesperson. So who do you want to speak to? What do you want us to talk about? We will find the person. No, and they started to uplift and put certain people on front covers of magazines and say, this is the leader. And now, if you're part of this movement, you think, why is she the leader now? Who said that he must be the leader? Now we are at it again, fighting amongst ourselves. Who invited you to go on TV? Why do you think you can speak on behalf of us? Now we're back at square one, and they know exactly that this is how it works. So we have seen a number of black faces with white masks, Black people who go up and seem to speak for us and seem to speak about our values and what we so desperately want to see change. But then we realize that no, they are just mascots. They are just puppets. They are just being used. I think I want to say that, coming out of apartheid, or the apartheid era, there were particularly two parties that stood out in a very Africanist understanding. There was PAC, Pan Africanist Congress, and AZAPO, Azanian People's Organization. These were two organizations that had a very solid standing in terms of an African-centered, African socialist, African worldview, African economy, African philosophy, African education, all of that. But I think they were also very susceptible to, because I think, when the people have been oppressed for generations, all you know is oppression. All you know is don't go out on the streets, it's dangerous. Don't get involved in anything, you'll be killed. Everything you know is fear. When it comes to a moment where it's being said that you are now free, you can go, you can live wherever you want, you can go. The feeling, because you have wanted this for 1,000 years, if you understand what I mean, like through your grandparents, you've been wanting this so much that when it finally is an opportunity, it has to be true. I cannot afford for this to be another scheme. I cannot sit and look again and say, no, I'm gonna wait another 5 years before I believe this. You want to believe it, so you become part of the celebration. You become part of, this has to be true. We are free, we are free, we are free. Until, and 5 years in, you look back and say, what kind of fool was I? Why did I listen to this again? Why did I become part of it? And I think many people have walked that route, and maybe some have not even woken up yet from that sleep, because it is a systematic way of keeping oppression dormant and happening. And we don't know it. So, or many of us don't know it. So I think that those two parties have become weakened, and they've also become quite separated, and there's internal disagreements, which has made it difficult for them to speak as one platform. But they had great potential, and I think to some extent they still do. Then the economic freedom fighters came in, EFF, who you might have heard of. Many people in diaspora have heard of Julius Malema, who's their party leader. And let me not discuss so much, are they a viable option for the leadership of the country? What I think they do to some extent quite well is that they are a good opposition in the sense that they do speak with a very strong, solid voice. People see them as troublemakers, and I think that's exactly what South Africa needs. It needs a lot of troublemakers, people who ask questions, people who say, no, we can't do that, people who get rowdy, people who disturb the conference, people who do things that you're not supposed to do as good black boys and girls, to sit still, not and only answer questions only ask questions when you are allowed to. No, they talk, they shout, they disturb. And I think not that disturbance in itself is the solution, but it is important on the way to find it. Because this colonial matrix that we have become so used to and think of as normal must be erupted, must be smashed, must be beaten up. It must be done so many things to. And I think EFF plays a role in that. I mean, there's many discussions, and I know there are many of my comrades also who don't agree with me on that. But I think they play a role in being that opposition, being that undisciplined voice. It's very important to also have those forces. And that's why I believe in young people. That's why I work predominantly with young people, because I believe if any movement that doesn't put young people at its core will die very soon. Will die very soon. If we want our ideals really take place and maybe give birth to things that my generation can't even see, because we are also blinded, then we need to put youth at the center from an early age. We cannot bring them in just for youth day or for them to sit at the back or just give them some soda and snack and make it cute. It cannot be cute. It needs to be revolutionary. But that means we also need to listen to young people and stop just saying they're confused. They don't care about politics. No, they don't care about what we do, because we don't seem like we are very good at what we say we are doing.
Right.
Be on us. We must do better.
Right. I agree. Let's go back real quick. Many times here in the US, and I like to do the comparison because I want the audience to see, I want the Moorish World TV citizens to see how we're so much alike in so many ways. And as you said, this colonialism matrix, so it's so much alike. And it's amazing that that many of us haven't realized how much that we're that we call it the iron hand of oppression in the Moorish side step of America. That all of us is under this iron hand of oppression, and it looks alike. It's a blueprint that is used around. It's global. It's a global blueprint. But I remember, and I think the only story that is etched in our mind of many stories that perpetuates the same idea is the story of Shaka Zulu. The story of Shaka Zulu, it's a fascinating story when you're unconscious. But when you're conscious and you look at the story of Shaka Zulu, it's a heartbreaking story that these foreigners can come and dominate in the way that they have. And today, the domination goes on. How is that story taken in South Africa? Because I know how I take it. One, before I became truly awoke, if that's a thing, I was like, wow, Shaka is a warrior. Da, da, da. Then after I kind of woke up, like, man, this is indoctrination here. This is showing that we can dominate you. We are advanced in technology. You're not. This is truly letting you know, don't you try it. Because if you do, this is what's waiting for you. And we see that in a lot of slave narrative stories here in America. How does that go over in South Africa? Do anybody critically go over that story there, or is it a thing in South Africa?
I think, again, South Africa is so many places at one time. It depends on where you sit, where you stand, whose voices are surrounded by, where you operate, where you live. So there are critical voices on Shaka Zulu's story, many as well. But the whole range is there. Also from the picture perfect, whitewashed story, because part of Shaka Zulu's legacy is also that the British really admired Shaka Zulu. Like they admired his warfare. They admired. They didn't expect anything like this from an African leader. So they've also kind of put him on some sort of a colonial pedestal to be their hero, be their example of an African warrior, who also did many problematic things against his people. And that's another discussion. But so you have that. You have the whitewashed, easy kind of touch of Shaka Zulu. Then you have those who staunchly defend Shaka Zulu as from Zulu cultural point of view, as the stalwart of Zulu warriorhood and strength and all of that, which when it's twisted in the wrong way, also nourishes a quite problematic form of, let me say, African masculinity. Because I think what Europeans also have done is that the dangerous, wild, brutal African warrior also into something that is desirable. Because that warrior figure evokes fear in them. And we think that if we can embody that, we already overpower them. That's not what it is. They're still seeing us as small and cute and invadable people, but they're just fascinated by this strength that this warrior icon is supposed to have. And when we then become enslaved to how they think about power, because remember, colonial power takes, grabs, refines, doesn't ask, doesn't negotiate, doesn't discuss it. It just takes and grabs and does things to another human being or a people or a community. And when that weaves itself into an idea of Black masculinity or African masculinity, we also become the embodiment of colonial subjects that do that thing. So just to exemplify, that means that some of us may take, and I'm not saying everybody does, but some may take from the story of Shaka Zulu that we are these warrior men. And whatever stands in our way, we're going to take it down. So if women are frisky, if women are asking too many questions, we're going to show them. And then that becomes a standard that is because that sounds cultural, especially when it's done in the language of the people as well. It sounds like it's African. It sounds like this is the opposite of Europeans, because Europeans told us that we are small and innocent and stupid, and this sounds like strength. This sounds like, but I just want us to be aware that in that archetype that is very European shape, because I'm not saying we're not supposed to be strong. I'm not saying we're not supposed to be brutal against those who are brutal against us. That's not my point. My point is when that becomes a stereotype of a form of masculinity that builds itself on power against someone or the power to push someone down. And when you don't have the power to push down the actual oppressor, you push down somebody who looks like you, whether that is a Black woman, whether that is a Black brother, whether that is somebody younger than you, whether that is somebody you feel you are superior to of your own race. So we take this template of colonial power and we meet it out against ourselves. And that's something that we really need to understand why we keep doing. And I want to talk about us now. I want to talk about us who belong to Pan-African organizations and say, we don't do that. Some of us do. Some of us bring these things into our organizations. Some of us are guilty of performing these forms of power, destructive power regimes within our own families, within our own organizations. And that must be rooted out. We cannot win. We cannot proclaim to be revolutionary when we just put some revolutionary gibbery stuff on top. But when you really dissect it, it's just colonial power and exploitation.
It's a thing going on the internet here in America also, this idea that Pan-Africanism is dead, that it no longer exists. But I think this discussion right here is a testament. I met you here in America when you came here. I did a presentation and you presented, and so Pan-Africanism is much alive. I don't know why they're pushing this narrative, but have you heard that concept that Pan-Africanism is dead? And could you speak on that?
Yes, I've heard it many times, and I think there's many aspects to the conversation. I think, especially from a continental view. I think for quite some time, Pan-Africanists seem to, and I'm not saying it's the truth, but I'm saying this is what seemed to be more likely than not. Pan-Africanist organizations for a while seemed to attract more academically inclined, intellectually speaking, people who then became kind of an elitist version of an African, who did not spend so much time in their community, who did not necessarily invest in the grandmother on the corner, the little child on the street. It was kind of a superior form of being African. And I think that pushed a lot of, other Africans out of those rooms and thought that these people think they are better. Just because, and a lot of these conversations have been held in English, even in Africa, they've been held in a colonial language. Books have been written in the language of the oppressor. And sometimes that goes so far that these become clever Englishmen who speak against the English, if you understand. So that has been a criticism against many Pan-African spaces. I'm not saying everybody has been like that, but that has become a way that some people have written off Pan-Africanists as just clever talk, just sitting in air-conditioned rooms and talk about how the world is colonized and all of that, but not really doing so much about it. Now, I know and you know that even when that version is told, that is not the truth. There's many other, often smaller, less funded and less resourced organizations who do the groundwork, who do the Saturday schools, who do the feeding schemes in the community, who do practical Pan-African work. And I think this is why my point about youth is so important. I want to mention it as often as I can because it's really one of my strong foundations in life, that I want to be available to young people. I want to be with young people. I want to be taught by young people and see the world through their eyes and not constantly insist on my view as the only one. And that's why I know that young people are interested in Pan-Africanism. They are nurtured by the Pan-Africanism. And when we guide the younger generation or give them the support that they need, let me rather put it that way, they will be able to create the Pan-Africanism that is right for this time. Because I think some Pan-Africanists have also been accused of this, that they're stuck in the old times. They speak as if it's 1960s still. And maybe some have done that. Maybe some have gotten, I have certain conversations where I'm literally bored. And with brothers that I really respect and sisters that I look up to. But I'm thinking that we can't have this conversation now. I don't know how to talk to you about what I discussed with you because this is not that relevant anymore. So I think we need to upgrade. And I think that naturally happens when young people are put into the center. And that's my experience, that when young people are nourished, when young people are validated, when young people are given the tools and the support that they need to really thrive in because young people come in with a different fire. When they're inside, they are inside. When they're angry, they're angry. When they don't like something, they don't like it, and everybody's going to know it. They don't put cute language on it. And I think that's a fire and an energy that we need more and more. And this is something that I want to say about young people in South Africa. And if there are people from South Africa or other African countries listening now, maybe even this is the same in the diaspora, many young Black people are saying, where are our elders? We want to talk to you. We want you to see us. And we don't see them. We pass them. We judge them. We think they are nonsense. We don't even invite them. And when we invite them, we have a box we want them to fit into. And when they don't, we call them names, we judge them. And again, no person, young or old, want to live through that, finds it comfortable to be in that position. So we need to, I want to say this as an elder now myself and to other elders. Are we really centering young people? Are we having a plan for the revolution to last for as long as it takes? Or is it just going to end with me? Because some of us seem like it's going to end with us.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I push too. I push, in fact, in our organization, I was telling the 20 somethings, listen, I can't be here 20 years later talking about what we're going to do and what we should do. These ideas must be taken on by you. I need to step aside and I need to give you the wisdom that I've gained from over 30 years. I have to give you that. And now you got to put in yours. And so I get that, it's a sad state of affairs that this is a global thing that most people that are in the elder space at this time, my generation and above, that they don't want to move aside. They cannot see themselves being a supporting cast of those to take us to the next level. I gave an example the other night. I said, if I get on a road from Baltimore and go to California, I can drive nonstop if I got the gas. But to start that road, it didn't start with one person. It started with a few people in a couple generations to get that road paved. And then the technology even advanced so it don't crumble so fast. And this took a few generations. And if we are not able to pass down so those can advance it, take it to the other generation, learn how to use hip hop to take it to the next generation. We have elders that would demonize hip hop because of what's been pushed by the oppressor. When hip hop can be a real tool to change situations if pushed properly. So I'm definitely on the same page as that. I want to get into your youth program and your youth things that you do, but before we get there, I need to talk about Nelson Mandela, because whenever you talk about South Africa, Nelson Mandela always comes up, or it's avoided for whatever reason. And so let me give you my concept. One of the concepts is that after all of those years, brother honorable, and I say honorable from information that I have, he went on to do the bidding for. This is some of the concepts in America. He went on and do the bidding for the same people that had him confined for all those years, and I don't know. I don't want to be any disrespectful any type of way, but it's like, and Winnie was put into the background and he was pushed to the forefront. Can you give us the concepts of Brother Nelson Mandela, after his release, his political tenure, and Winnie Mandela, if you will? And we can touch on this in depth in the future, but for our conversation, I really think we need to hear from one who's there and amongst the people that maybe was the elders that was there when he was released and after he got into government, whatever. What do you say to that?
Obviously, also in South Africa, there are many different versions of what people believe and how people see his legacy and what Nelson Mandela means to them. But let me start with, I think what is important to understand, first of all, is that apartheid didn't end because everybody realized that this is a human rights tragedy, this is wrong, nobody's supposed to treat other people like this. It fell apart because it wasn't economically viable. And white people understood that they cannot hold up the power construct of apartheid anymore. They will have to let it fall. And then they understood that it was important that this looks like there's a new human dispensation. So after this, everything will be done in good faith. That must be what it looks like. So from the time, and I think that there are many, many stories that are coming out also about what really happened behind the scenes with Nelson Mandela before his release. Because I remember Nelson Mandela, especially in the 80s, having a very revolutionary voice, speaking with, not mincing anything. Like it was clear what he was, who we were for and who we were against, and that. So something happened with Nelson Mandela, and there are many stories, and I can't say that. I mean, I wasn't there particularly myself, but from what I've read and from what I hear the conversations are, and from how I see it myself, I'm very sure that white power decided to reconstruct Nelson Mandela as this. I call it teddy bear. You say you don't want to offend his legacy, because there is something to his legacy, but there's also something very sad about who he became and what he came to emulate and represent. And he came to represent the voice that said, "Let's not trouble white people. Let's protect white people. Let's tell them that we need them. Let's make sure we say we are their friends. Let's make sure that they they are not told that they must leave South Africa. Let's make sure that they feel secure and safe in South Africa. That's the most important thing. And that, when you speak that voice, you're speaking in a legacy of Black people who have been coerced to really kill their own. Because that's the result of that. Because the result of what Nelson Mandela then articulated was that Black people will still live in poverty, Black people will still be marginalized, Black people will still not have power, but white people must have it, and they will continue to have it. Of course, behind the scenes, white people were busy recreating what could then become today's apartheid. Because I would say apartheid is still very alive and lives very well and thrives very well and continues to empower whiteness and white people and white power spaces. And it can do that because the economy has been rigged in that way. The capitalist economy does that. It exploits and it makes those who are marginalized even further marginalized, and it upholds those who are able to break through. And if you can put kind of a racial language on that again, of course, white supremacy is always served. And I think that's what Nelson Mandela became. He became the gateway through which white power could coerce the Black masses to not go to a revolutionary space, to not vent out the anger and frustration they had against white ownership and white suppression, and then calm it for a while, hope that things are going to go well, and then when the layers of anger and frustrations and aggression built up and no longer can be held back, it's turned towards other Black people. Mm-hmm. And although Nelson Mandela may not, I don't know to what extent Nelson Mandela at all times understood what was being done, whether he was at certain stages thinking that let me do this now so that later we can really have power. I would not know. These would just be assumptions and guesses from my side. But be that as it may, what he has come to mean for the South African trajectory and where we have been going as a country is really to cement that power structure that still feeds and nourishes and keeps empowering whiteness in this country.
And see, because I'm not from South Africa, and I want to be careful with my words because you never know how countrymen would feel about their leaders, and we get an outside view, and you never want to really overstep your boundaries. So I'm glad I hear from brother that's there that experienced it amongst the people and can feel the energy of the true understanding of Nelson Mandela's journey. Now, what about Winnie Mandela? Now, she's championed in America as holding the line. She's championed.
Mama Winnie called Mama Africa, and for a reason. She was a very caring person, and she was very determined. She never flinched in her political revolutionary stance. And we remember her as a revolutionary mother in a completely different language than what we remember Nelson Mandela for. And of course, I'm speaking my truth. I'm speaking the truth of people that I work with and those who would call themselves activists and revolutionaries and critical thinkers. There will be people who, you could meet many people in South Africa who would say completely the opposite of what I'm sharing with you. That would also be part of South African reality. But the reason I'm saying what I'm saying is that it was very clear that the system behind these operations decided for this relationship to not work. And for her, since they knew that her political stance was strong and firm, and they could see that she would have a bad influence on Nelson Mandela, who they needed to shape and design into this, I referred to that character as a teddy bear. And she was not going to stand by that. She's been on record saying that as well. I don't know this man. This is not what we do. This is not where we come from. She has said things like that when she was alive. And yes, there are some stories about maybe certain things that she did, certain things that were unbecoming. I think number one, and this is because people could say that, so why does she get a free pass? And Nelson Mandela, he was also in a difficult position, but why are you not standing up for him? And I think, first of all, and I think this goes for both of them and other revolutionaries who be criticized too, that unless you've been in that situation where your life is on the line, your children's lives are on the line, you make one wrong move and thousands of people may be dying. You would also then be careful about what you say and what you do. I think that's number one. We need to remember that many of us have not been in those situations. We have never had that reality presented to us. So it's easy to judge outside of living that reality. But when that is said, Nelson Mandela's a revolutionary leader's purpose is not, it doesn't rest with themselves as people. They need to represent us. They need to speak the people's voice. And the people's voice was very clear. Even the most conservative voice at that time wanted white people to leave, wanted white power to fall, even the most conservative voice would have said that. The conservative black voice would have said that. So a revolutionary mission is to act on behalf of the people. Whether their life is in danger or not, that's a decision you should have made long ago. That cannot be the dividing line anymore. You are there for the truth of the people. And if that is in opposition to the powers that you're fighting, that's just what revolution is about. So if they threaten your life, that's what they do. You would have known that. If they come at you, you cannot be surprised. So this is when the fire comes and you need to be able to stand.
That's right.
And Mandela showed us that she's willing to stand. She's for the people. We trusted her. We felt she represented us. She spoke our voice. She was in meetings and places that we could identify with. And this is what a leader does. Nelson Mandela, to many of us, became a very strange, wishy-washy person that we couldn't really even identify with, especially from a revolutionary point of view.
Yes. Well put. And you said it in a way that I could never say it. So let's get into, as we wrap up now, let's get into what your true passion is and what you have involved yourself in, and give us a history of that as it relates to your personal journey in assisting our people to get up out of this matrix. Where does it start with you, with your organization?
Right. So obviously, I also have a life before South Africa, which was a long road towards understanding Pan Africanism, Black consciousness, understanding myself as an African man, understanding what is happening to our people in all parts of the world. I became very interested in South Africa because the conflict in South Africa spoke to me. I got involved. I had friends. I was very invested in South Africa's reality. And when I came here in 1993, it was very clear to me that this is the country I feel I'm a part of. This is the country where I have a sense of home, where I have a sense of mission. So when I moved here permanently during the 90s, I then decided that, because I think when you move to a place that you see as home, but you don't have the history of home, meaning you haven't grown up here, you haven't been here through all these years, you need to also really have a conversation with yourself. What is it that I can offer? And I think I'm trying to tell my story in a way that also gives a little bit of advice to revolutionary minds in the diaspora that want to see themselves living at home in Africa. I think it's very important that you also think about, what can I bring? What kind of solutions do I know? But before you voice them, because you should have that conversation with yourself, but before you come and announce them, observe, listen, sit, close your mouth, be quiet, see what people are doing. Because, Brother Harka, I've seen quite a few sisters and brothers from the diaspora coming to South Africa and other places in Africa. And I know it's well intended, but before they observe and before they try to analyze what's happening, they kind of stop themselves from giving advice. Oh, you guys should do this. Why don't you do a business like that? Why do you guys not do anything here? But I think this doesn't make any sense. At home, we do at least this. You guys don't do anything. And when you do that, you're also disenfranchising yourself from people. People are saying, oh, that's that. And that's when you are called that American. Because I know that fits quite painfully in an African-American experience if you're called that American. But it comes with, sometimes, I'm not saying always, but sometimes it comes with that experience that these people who say they're coming home humbly, they're not so humble. They're quite arrogant, and they seem to know what they should tell us. And I'm not saying you shouldn't share ideas. I'm not saying you shouldn't have ideas that you can share. But at least be a little bit humble and take your time so that you also, because I think the beauty of African society is, and you will only understand it when you've walked it for a while, because in the beginning it may be frustrating. African society has many codes, it has many layers, it has many complexities that when you get into them and you start to internalize them and you start to move with them, are really human, are really beautiful spiritually and on a human level, how you connect, how you know if somebody's safe to speak to, how you decide to not speak to a certain person because of certain reasons that you can't really explain, but it's something that you pick up in your spirit. And I think that learning cannot be done just through oral dialogue. You need to be quiet, to observe. You need to sit under a tree. You need to allow an elder to speak to you for a long time and see how people move. So I did that, and I learned a lot through that. And I decided then that what I could offer was a space for people who did not have a particular, what can I say, for people who knew that they were searching for an African identity, a rerouting of their Africanness, but did not maybe have a direct calling for what they would name that, whether it would be Rastafari, whether it would be Pan Africanism, they just knew that they were searching. So we set up Ebukosini. Ebukosini means House of Royalty, Ebukosini Solutions, as a space for people who have questions, a space for especially young people, not only, but especially young people, where they can come and ask, where they can come and do research, where they can come and find books, where they can come and find elders, where they can come and find like-minded people that they can continue to walk that journey of rediscovering themselves. And that over the years was then turned into particular programs. So we have the African Family Dialogue, where we bring people together, where we have a person who's done something, for instance, published a book, for instance, developed land for farming, or is well versed in African ways of understanding birthing, for instance. That could be a speciality. They come and share their knowledge, they come and share what they do, and then the conversation is really a dialogue for different age groups to talk about what can we do better as a family, within the family. Then we have programs for African men, we have programs for African women, we have programs for African entrepreneurs. We have a Teen Talk program that those who would be interested in having their team, so far it's only for young men. We're hoping that in future it will also be a class for young women. But it's every Sunday, young teenage African men are gathering on Zoom to have conversations with, let me call young adults that we have mentored over years. So they're having conversations about how to face life as a young African man, how to be disciplined, how to study, how to, when you feel your parents are treating you wrong, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with cultural identity when you live in such a mixed reality, when you're drawn towards the Western world, and when you know that your roots are African and that's what you should love and appreciate. So we have very, very energetic conversations about that, and that is open to African men all over the world. Obviously, most of them are based in South Africa, and Mama, yeah. Obviously, most of them are based in South Africa, but we also have some people who are based in England. We have a few people who also tuned in from West Africa. That's something that people can get in touch with us for. But basically, what we want to do is to create and recreate spaces for dialogue. And we actually want to get a little bit away from this monotonous way of bringing in a speaker who's going to tell the truth. Not that speakers are bad. Speakers are good, but not always. And I think we have become a people who's waiting for leaders and speakers to save us. And we mustn't do that. We must stop doing that. So what we also do is our plan sometimes is to go in and have a dialogue in a township, and two or three of us know that we're going to share a personal story. We're going to start there. And as we do that, people are going to start to talk. People are going to start to share. People are going to start to advise each other. So instead of me or someone else standing in front of a group saying that, don't do this, don't do that, this is important, you are wrong, then the conversation is guided. So there's an elder sitting here to my left. Baba, you were listening to this young man saying this. How would you advise him? And then the advice comes. Young men or young women, you are saying that the elders don't understand you. What is it that they don't understand? What is it that you wish for them to know? And then they see. So it's kind of a guided dialogue. That's our main aim, to really get the African community to do what we always have done, solve our problems with everyone in our community. Because when we work together, we know that we are strong. I think sometimes we are scared of our own power. Yeah. That's why we keep. It's easier to come down on a black person than to actually believe in him or her. Because when we do, we actually rise as a force. And that's what we work towards.
Absolutely. And I agree with that. I think something that has been put inside of us, unconscious to us, drives our not connecting and moving as one, because when you begin to move as one psychologically or unconscious psychologically, we know that the opposition will come and try to reinvent the separation or the disruption. And so if we come together somewhere deep inside of us, well, we've got to avoid that, because if it happens, they're coming. And they're coming in another adverse way. They're not going to come the same. And something, and I try to figure it out through meditation, through contemplation, like, what is that thing inside us that when we disagree, we got to be disagreeable. Like when we disagree, it's like we're going to war. It's like what in the world? I gave an example last night. I said, in some groups here in America, you have them that say that the white man is the devil. In another group, they say that they're just completely evil, or that they're just oppressors, and that's just who they are. They don't have a soul. I mean, it's so many concepts, whatever the case may be. But so last night I said, isn't it amazing that all of these concepts about Europeans and the colonization of Europeans and the way of thinking of Europeans, that regardless of their differences, they're still able to work together to oppress the dominant people on the planet Earth? They even if they disagree, in America, the politics of Republicans and Democrats, after they disagree, they can go to Starbucks together. I was like, and we can disagree on something that really is really immaterial as it relates to our advancing as a people. And we want to take each other out. Something is wrong with that.
That's exactly why Pan-Africanism, Black consciousness, and decolonial practice, I want to say practice and not just thought, is so vital for us, because you and me know that when we actually love our people, I'm sure you do the same, you sit in conversations with people you actually disagree with, but you can have the conversation. You can tell them tomorrow that you have a different view. You don't have to tell them right now. And I think that's the mind of, what can I say? And I'm not saying that we have freed ourselves from oppression by speaking like this, but it's a step towards that direction. When you live within your oppression, you live with the conflict, and everything within you is traumatized. So everything, your intellect, your spirit, your being, everything is traumatized. So you are triggered. That fear that has been installed in us, that may not always be realized as fear, it pops up. I feel you disrespecting me. I feel you talking back to me. I feel I must be the dominant voice. These are things that you do out of desperation, because we are about to sink, like the water is here and I'm just above the surface and you seem to be pushing me under. So I need to come up and get you. That's the feeling of being oppressed. So it's not just that people are ridiculous. It's not just that people are insane. It's just that they don't know that they're living with the trauma of being oppressed.
Brother, we can have this conversation on and on and on. This is a beautiful conversation. Brother, let me ask you, is that a possibility that we can have a conversation and bring some locals in, or your group in? And I would love to do that, bro. It's just, I don't see enough of this on YouTube. I just don't see. I want to be different. I want to be different to what's right. Do you know what I mean? Right. Like I can't help it. I don't want to be that vlogger. I've been doing this for about 5 years, and I've always been on the cutting edge. I question everything. I feel sincerity, You know what I'm saying? Like, I can tell when someone is acting. I can tell when somebody's putting on. And from the time that I met you, I knew like it was an energy about you, and we were supposed to do something. And I literally tracked you down for this interview. I'm like, I got it. And this been a few years ago. This been a few years since we last spoke. I literally tracked you down because of your energy. Your energy was genuine. Your energy connected to the ancestors in which I connect to. Regardless if nobody understands it. The reality is if those who listen to this broadcast understand what I mean about this connecting to our ancestors and connecting to our plight, I understand it. And that's what led me to, I gotta find Brother Baba. I gotta find Brother Baba. And so I searched throughout and I found out, I was like, wow, we had a text back in whatever year that was, and we didn't get around to it. So it's a blessing that we can get around to it. But brother, if you can, as we wrap up, if you can let me know when you would like to set something up, take how much time you want. But if you take too long, I'm going to be searching you out, because I would love to bring in the voices of South Africa in the work that you do, whether elders, young generations, whatever, because I believe that the world needs to hear this. And Moorish World TV has we in West Africa, we in the UK, definitely in the United States, the biggest audience as I look in at the YouTube back screen is New York City, and everybody know New York is the metropolis of the United States of America. And I would love to have the voices heard if you can make that happen for us, brother.
Happen. There's no mystery to that. It's just to organize it. We have a lot of people in our midst who are great speakers, great narrators, great activists. And I think that's maybe the number one thing, because we need to talk about the practice. I think, going back to what I said about how some people became a bit disenfranchised from Pan-African community organizations, was that we had very heated meetings, I think, in many organizations, where we spoke a lot about what must be done and how it must be done. But we are a people who are also very visually inclined and spiritually inclined, like you mentioned now. And when we haven't been to a place, when we even haven't been to a family that seems to be operating around an African-centered principle, it just becomes hoo-ha, it just becomes talk, it just becomes an idea. And I think young people want to see practice. And that's when they come, and that's how I think a lot of young people have gravitated towards us as well, because they call us up afterwards and say, I came to your event, there was something different about what you do. I want to understand what you are doing, because it's different. I could feel it, I could sense it. There's something that draws me towards it. And I think when we can do more of that, and we'd be very happy to have those form of dialogue on this platform with you.
I am very interested in that. One thing that YouTube and social media has done, it made it hard to differentiate entertainment from intelligence. It made it hard to for people to thumb through their phone and say, let me check this out. This is beneficial, or this is just an anomaly. Let me just look at it because, he's talking about something. And they don't really take in this message in order to become the message. As we say in the Moorish side tip of America, become the message that you bring. And so my aim is to make sure that these messages that come through here, as we say, we are critical. You use the term too. You say critical thinking. This is a critical thinking platform, because we want people to embody the message and take it to their families, take it to their community, as well as take it to the world, self, family, community, world. And that's what it is. And so I definitely be looking for your email when you set it up, or your text, because I want to take it there. And I tell you another thing that I would love to do in the future, if I'm able to raise the finances, I want to come to South Africa, and I would love for you to receive me and my family. And I want to come because I'm at the age now where I don't want to read history. I want to see history. I don't want to read the problem. I want to see the problem. I see the problem here. I'm talking to you and you're relaying the problem, but I want to see the problem. Also, I want to experience the solution.
Yes, please. And Brother Sahaka, when you say that, let me just also quickly mention, if there are people, and of course you'll be welcome. We would receive you, we'd set up programs, you would have an incredible time with brothers and sisters. And for anyone who's watching this and would like to come, contact us. I'm sure through you we'll share our contact details. We have been the landing space for many people from around the continent, but also from the diaspora. And I think this is very important to say. When you plan your trip to the continent, remember, first of all, as an African, living in the diaspora, you are returning home and you are crossing the bridge. You're walking back through the gate of no return. Remember, you were sent away to never return. So you are threatening the whole world system just by taking a flight. You're not supposed to do this. You're not supposed to have a good experience. You're not supposed to bond with brothers and sisters. That is not supposed to happen. So the tourism industry in Africa is not set up for that. It's set up for European tourists to come and exploit and go on safari and look at animals and look at natives staying in huts. That's what tourism is. So you must not book your trip through these companies ever. You must get in touch with people like us. And you said something earlier that you are quite open to different thinking and different ways of being, and you understand that your way is not necessarily the only or the way that exists. If you have an interest, you can tell us. Are there people like this in South Africa? Are there people of this political persuasion, this particular faith? We may not know everybody, but those that we know, we don't have any problem to form a link and to set it up for you or give you a contact. We want you to have the absolutely best experience. And yes, we will give advice. We'll say, no, don't go there. Don't stay there. Don't use this company. Don't use this transport. And we would want you to. And this is something that is very difficult to research from outside when you, for instance, when you want to, so the tourism industry is very white owned. A very small percentage of black owned businesses within tourism. So chances are that when you come and you sleep in hotels, you book transport, you go on trips, you are only benefiting white people or white companies. So if you want to support black people, because you want to have some guidance, because you want to know not only that it's a black owned company, but what is that company's status? Do they know what they're doing? How long have they been in? That you would ask any operator, because you would like to know their profile. And you'd be searching online, black owned, and nothing is coming up. And then you're going to go with that website that looks fantastic because it's set up through a white money. So those are the things that you need to discuss with somebody like us. Not only us who can do this, of course, but we're more than willing to help and to be that partner for you.
Absolutely. I think anybody that's returning to the continent in any country, they should definitely make sure that it's a spiritual experience. And going through the European imperialists is not going to be a spiritual experience. I never did it, but I can imagine that it would not be a spiritual experience. You're just really just going to say I went. And you're going through these companies that is shells of an experience and not the essence of the experience. So absolutely, brother. I definitely would never take myself or my family through these shells of experiences and say, look, I'm standing next to a giraffe. I'm good.
Yeah.
So, brother, anything you like to say in closing, brother?
No, I'd just like to inspire anyone who is watching this. And as you have listened to this conversation, I think really zone in on how far you are away from your purpose. Have you found it? Have you listened to it? Have you accepted it? Because I think I find a lot of us asking, what is my purpose? What is my purpose? And we often ask the question as if it's just going to come to us mystically. You need to walk to find your purpose. You need to be in motion. African life is about energy. It's about connection. It's about like just how we met and how we have bonded. And if you close yourself off from that, you're probably going to take very long until you find any piece of your purpose. So be courageous enough to walk. Be courageous enough to let yourself into situations that you may not fully know and understand, but at least be curious enough to understand them and look for knowledge, ask questions. Look for answers from African sources. And as you go, that purpose will come to you and you will start to know it And then the question is, will you own it? And when you own it, you become that powerful sister or brother that is meaningful to our community. And we need you on that side. So to those of you who already do that, thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for being a solution. And for those who are still sitting on the edge, jump.
Brother, thank you so much. And please do this for me. Please let me know when you're ready, sooner than later, to have the next dialogue. If in this dialogue we missed something that we could have touched on more, please send me a list so we can come back and do it again. Brother, I want to keep this conversation going. This is a very well needed conversation, very important conversation, if you will, for us that have the ideas that we can get over this oppression. Some of us don't even believe that we can get over it. But for those that do, this is very important. So thanks again, my brother.
Thank you. Thank you. Black Power.
Thank you, brother. And this is Dr. Baba Buntu here on Moorish World TV. Thank you, my brother.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Indeed. So brother,
yeah.
I will end it right.
I'm the manifest. Check 1, 2. Sean, we got one. We got one. Yeah. Crypto, yeah. We got one. Yeah. Maymuna, we got one. Candy, we got one. Abu X. I'm the manifest of God. The manifest of God. Hit me privately, let's see who really hard. I'm the manifest of God. Ain't worrying about you frauds. Gone. Hit me privately, let's see who really hard. I'm the manifest of God. The manifest of God. Let's see who really hard. Ain't worrying about you frauds. I'm the manifest of God. The manifest of God. Ain't worrying about you frauds. Hit me privately, let's see who really hard. Ain't worrying about you frauds. Boy, I'm a gorilla, Viet Cong, guerrilla warfare. Don't make me turn killer. You acting like my knife don't shank, my gun don't bust. Hit me quietly, we can do the fist to cup. Show up, I'm really about that stick life, but I'm trying to keep it peace to bring my people to the light. You all washed up beer belly has-beens be tripping. Internet disrespect, making threats, you slipping. Now you said it how you think I'm gonna respond. With a song and a live stream, homie, you wrong. You done showed that John too many times and they ain't use it. And I ain't really sure who you got me confused with. I'm the manifest of God, the manifest of God. Ain't worried about you frauds, let's see who really hard. I'm the manifest of God, ain't worried about your frauds. Holla at me privately, come on, let's see who really hard. I'm the manifest of God, the manifest of God. Hit me privately, let's see who really hard. I'm the manifest of God, the manifest of God. Hit me privately, let's see who really hard. I'm the manifest.
Today will not be a reality to you if man did not calculate it or evaluate it or write it down. It wouldn't mean nothing to you.
So special.
It wouldn't mean nothing to you. The power of the mind is God mind. Connected to the force, the universal force is nature, the creator. You must be in balance with the universal force. This is the only way this works.
The manifest of God, the manifest of God. Hit me privately, let's see who really hard. I'm the manifest of God, ain't worrying about you frauds. Gone, hit me privately, let's see who really hard. I'm the manifest of God, the manifest of God. Let's see who really hard. Ain't worrying about you frauds. I'm the manifest of God, the manifest of God. Ain't worrying about you frauds. Hit me privately, let's see who really hard. Ain't worrying about you frauds. Boy, I'm a gorilla, Viet Cong, guerrilla warfare. Don't make me turn killer. You acting like my knife don't shank, my gun don't bust. Hit me quietly, we can do the fist to cup. Show up, I'm really about that stick life, but I'm trying to keep it peace to bring my people to the light. You all washed up beer belly has-beens be tripping. Internet disrespect, making threats, you slipping. Now you said it how you think I'm gonna respond. With a song and a live stream, homie, you wrong. You done showed that John too many times and they ain't use it. And I ain't really sure who you got me confused with. I'm the manifest of God, the manifest of God. Ain't worried about you frauds, let's see who really hard. I'm the manifest of God, ain't worried about your frauds. Holla at me privately, come on, let's see who really hard. I'm the manifest of God, the manifest of God. Hit me privately, let's see who really hard. I'm the manifest of God, the manifest of God. Hit me privately. privately, let's see who really hard. I'm the